Namaskar and welcome to everyone. You are watching another insightful episode of our podcast, Global Focus, where we bring you expert analysis on the most pressing global issues. Today's discussion is critical as we dive into the key geopolitical challenges India will face in 2025. In an ever-changing world, India stands at the crossroads of strategic power shifts, economic alliances, and security challenges. From border tensions to global trade dynamics, from regional diplomacy to emerging threats, what should India prepare for in the coming year? To decode this complexity, we have with us a distinguished guest, Dr. Adityanjee, President of the Council for Strategic Affairs, a highly respected voice in geopolitics and strategic affairs. His in-depth analysis and expertise will give us a clearer understanding of India's position in the evolving global order. Dr. Adityanjee, welcome to the podcast. It is truly an honor to have you with us. We look forward to your valuable insights on how India can navigate the challenges and strengthen its strategic position on the global stage.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sinha, for inviting me on your platform, Global Focus. I'm very pleased to be here and discuss India's geopolitical challenges in year 2025.
Yes, sir. So, without further ado, let's begin with this thought provoking discussion. My very first question to you, can India and China ever be real friends, or will they always be rivals? What do you say about it?
India and China are peer competitors. And that's the reality that nobody can deny. India and China have not been friends since 47, despite all the efforts by successive Indian governments.
Right, sir.
China uses a strategy of hedging.
Mm.
In geopolitics, it's called simultaneous use of engagement and containment. And there's a term for it, a compounded term called congagement, which was coined by an Afghan-American diplomat by name Zalmay Khalilzad. So remember in the 50s, when we had a love affair of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai,
Yes.
China was engaging India through quote unquote Panchsheel while building,
Military.
Gorak-Karan highway and taking over Aksai Chin. So they do these kind of things simultaneously. And furthermore, in 2014, when the current government came in power, Xi Jinping was invited to visit India. He specifically requested to visit Prime Minister Modi's village, where he was serenaded on a swing and treated with dhokla. And at that time, Chinese army or PLA was crossing the border.
Right.
And as we talk now today that yes, we are trying to normalize the situation on the border, there is going to be disengagement.
Yes.
While those things are going on, China announces that they are going to build a dam on Brahmaputra River,
Yes.
diverting the supply of water to Bharat and subsequently to Bangladesh. So China's rhetoric notwithstanding, Chinese actions speak for itself.
Yes.
And in all possible scenarios, China remains a peer competitor, and China will continue in 2025 to continue to contain India and Indian footprint on the global arena, because in China's quest for superpower status, numero uno status on the world stage, they have only one nation to subdue, and that is Bharat. So let's not talk about delusions of friendship with China. That will never be achieved, and China will remain as a peer competitor, if not outright enemy.
So coming to my second question, if the US and Russia are not on the same side, where where does India stand?
The US and Russia should not be in the situation they are in, especially after dissolution of the Soviet Union. And even prior to that, even Mikhail Gorbachev, when he was the Communist Party General Secretary,
Yeah,
had asked the Western nations that Soviet Union as well as Russian Federation, they want to be part of the common European home. And that's how they brought the reforms called Glasnost
yes, and perestroika.
and Perestroika. Glasnost being open society and Perestroika meaning economic restructuring. And they slowly started reforms that led to dissolution of the Soviet Union, but subsequent governments of Russian Federation took a pro-Western, pro-US approach, specifically under Boris Yeltsin. And even in the first couple of years of Vladimir Putin's regime,
Yeah,
there were attempts to engage United States. In fact, Putin himself had said that the Russian Federation wants to be part of NATO. The problem was the American Department of State, US Department of State,
yeah,
that still had Cold War mentality. The US reneging on the promises that NATO will not, expand eastward. These guarantees were given verbally by James A. Baker III, not only to Russian leaders, but also to German Chancellor Kohl, when Germany was trying to unify East and West Germany into a single German nation, and this issue was discussed. So that time it was said that NATO will not move an inch eastward. So from 19 countries, NATO is now 31 countries, and they were kind of poking Russian Federation in the eye continuously, and they were engaging former Soviet republics
mhm,
to turn anti-Russian. And when you keep on having the same mentality when the other party is trying to engage over a period of 20 years,
yeah,
you are seeing the results now. Without realizing that their real enemy is no longer the Russian Federation, people genuinely wanted democracy and reforms in that country and wanted to have good relationships with the West because they didn't want to live under a lesser lifestyle than the Western Europe. And they wanted to be integrated with the European Union.
mhm,
So both European Union and United States, along with their military alliance NATO, missed an opportunity to engage Russian Federation. They did not identify who was their real strategic threat. It was not the Russian Federation, it was China. So we have this situation that India has to engage with both the parties, United States and Russian Federation. But we say in geopolitics that international relations are not zero-sum game.
yes,
There's no reason for India not to have relationship with the Russian Federation while developing better relationship with the United States. And if United States does not understand that, that is their folly. Geopolitically, you cannot ignore a country like Russian Federation that may not be the superpower, but it is still a major regional power,
yeah,
both in Europe as well as in Asian continent. And we have had historically good relations with that country, and we should continue to do trade, purchase oil, gas, whatever commodities we can get from them because it is much cheaper and it makes sense. So there's no reason when during Ukraine, NATO, Russia war, West was upset with India for buying, oil and gas from Russian Federation. They were themselves purchasing actually Russian gas to heat up their homes. So there was a lot of hypocrisy. But coming to the facts, historically Russia and its former incarnation, Soviet Union, always supported India in United Nations and United Nations Security Council whenever it was a, issue or crisis of existence. And our armed forces acquired military hardware from Russian Federation and Soviet Union at one point to the extent of 90%, now around to the extent of 60%.
Yeah.
So there's no way India can disengage with Russian Federation just because the US does not like it. And it will go against Indian tenets of strategic independence.
Right.
So India is doing a good job at this point in time, trying to engage both Russian Federation and the United States and the European Union and China while safeguarding her own geopolitical interests and geoeconomic interests, because in this day and era, it is the geoeconomic interests which are paramount. The Prime Minister has already said this is not the era of wars.
Yeah.
So even whatever the existing wars are, people are trying to extinguish them, to contain them, to resolve them, whether that is Ukraine versus Russia or in the West Asia, Hamas versus Israel. The attempts are to, douse the flames and, contain the wars. So in this scenario, it does not make sense for Bharat not to engage with Russian Federation either economically, militarily, culturally, geopolitically. It's a good partner. It's a time-tested partner, and there's no reason not to continue that trajectory we are on. Yes, we would like to have stronger economic relationships with Russian Federation. We would probably like Russia to buy, the manufactured goods, day-to-day consumer items from Bharat, so that trade imbalance that is with Russia can be sorted out.
Yeah.
We already have good trade relationships with the United States. It's the number one trading partner of India. So let the situation continue and let both parties understand as mature nations and mature civilizations that relationship with one is not at the cost of the other.
Yeah. So moving to our western border, why Pakistan instability is a concern for India?
Pakistan instability may be concern for India because Pakistan is a transitional state. It's not a natural state. It was contrived because of imperial geopolitical ambitions to continue to have a foothold in the Indian subcontinent, the way it was created by the British colonialists. And Pakistan has been used by the West and the superpower from 47 onwards to contain India, to needle India, and to box India. And in that process, China has also entered the fray. So, yes, you have to be cautious about instability in Pakistan, but I totally disagree with the, common folklore that a stable and strong Pakistan is in India's strategic interest. I think that is a lot of baloney.
Mm.
I mean, this is a state that was created on one one issue only, that is anti-Indianism, and on the basis of a religion, and the reason that was anti-Hinduism. So it is an artificially contrived state. It broke down in two parts because of its internal contradictions. And it is very likely that this instability will not go away.
Right. There.
Where is former Federal Republic of Yugoslavia? Post World War II, it was created as a nation. Now, after dissolution of Soviet Union, either it imploded from within or it was broken into different parts because of engagement by NATO and Western nations, specifically EU. So the most likely scenario for Pakistan, whether that will happen in 2025 or later on, is that it will become part of history. The constituent states of Pakistan will implode from within because the glue that binds no longer works. And that glue that binds or was supposed to bind them was religion. And you have seen in multiple theaters in the world that religion is not the glue. You had fights and wars between Iran and Iraq. You had fights between or war between Iraq and Kuwait.
Yeah.
You have fights between Iran and Saudi Arabia. You have fights between Yemen amongst Houthis and Saudi-sponsored government. There is no way Pakistan is going to stay as a unified nation. There is a lot of instability. If the West stops pouring money into this country
Mm-hmm.
and keep on sustaining it artificially, this country will no longer survive. I'm not going to speculate what would be the cartographic status
Yeah.
post Pakistan dissolution, but rather than worrying about instability in Pakistan, uh, any government in Bharat and our policy establishment must plan for a scenario when this country breaks up and is no longer there. And one of the challenges would be how to deal with the leftover nuclear weapons
Yeah. That is the
in
big.
that state.
Yeah.
Who is going to secure them
Mm-hmm.
so that they do not get under the control of terrorist and jihadi elements? So that is one challenge for which we need to have a plan. And if other countries are not willing to participate in that plan, we should have an India-centric plan in which India may have to do something about it. Mind you, the other challenge that is coming in 2025 is Pakistan's forays in Bangladesh. Despite its own internal instability, Pakistan is instigating Bangladesh, the current Islamist, non-democratic, transitional government, to take anti-India postures, selling weapons, developing military alliance. So that is of more concern rather than any perceived instability in Pakistan. That is more of a challenge for 2025 for Bharat as to how to prevent actually Pakistani army and Pakistani navy to continue to have involvement in Bangladesh, whether you may have to do a blockade of Pakistani ships. It may come to that uh, when push comes to shove. So let's be very clear. A strong and stable Pakistan is not in India's interest. If it implodes, let it be so, but contain the nuclear weapons from that. If you have to develop treaty relationships with post-Pakistan statelets, I think that should be the plan, and possibly not just treaty relationships, but giving them protectorate status or something like that as a way forward. But for 2025, I think India must do everything so that Pakistan does not get a foothold in Bangladesh.
So moving to my last question, will the world stop using US dollar, and how does that matter to India?
I think it's a delusion that West will stop using US dollar. Dollar and US power are not going to disappear. Let's be very realistic.
Yeah.
China has been trying since 2008 financial crisis to boost up their own currency, yen or renminbi, as an international currency. Generally, if we see last 200 years, the international reserve currency is the currency of the reigning superpower. It used to be pound sterling till Second World War. And as United States replaced United Kingdom or Imperial British Empire as the reigning hegemon or the policeman of the world, the international currency changed from pound sterling to dollar. The reality is that US is declining, but its economy is still the largest. And they control international institutions, the Bretton Woods, the IMF, the World Bank, and they can and dollar is also not actually pegged to gold anymore. So they can print as many dollars as they want for their domestic reasons. Yes, there will be alternative mechanisms at local level within other countries to do transnational trade using local currencies, and it should be so. But that does not take away dollar's hegemony, and that's the reality. So let's not get deluded that there's going to be de-dollarization tomorrow. People have been talking about de-dollarization for the last 2 years. Despite efforts by China to have yen or renminbi be accepted as an international, currency, reserve currency, replacing dollar, only 7% of the trade is done in yen between China and other countries. We have got a window of opportunity now. Rupee trade or trade in local currency is done by India with 22 other countries.
Yeah.
Our UPI and RuPay interfaces are being used for regional trade. And yes, we should continue on that. But let's not say that, rupee will become the international tender. I mean, that is unrealistic. We need to continue to focus on our domestic issues, improve manufacturing in Bharat,
Yeah.
and continue to improve what is called comprehensive national power.
Right, sir.
All our geopolitical challenges in 2025, whether they are emanating from China, from Pakistan, or from Western imperialist alliances, interference in Indian subcontinent region, are because India is not so strong. So if you continue to take care of domestic issues, improve and strengthen the manufacturing sector, and continue to boost Indian economy so that other problems are taken into consideration and solved, and the economy rises from fifth state to fourth level, third level, and the comprehensive national power improves, suddenly we will find that these geopolitical challenges are disappearing or declining. Why we have challenge from China? Chinese economy is multifold of Indian economy. We have around $4 trillion. Their economy is around $19 trillion. So it's almost fivefold. And it was not always like that. China has foreign exchange reserves of around $4.1 trillion if we include the Hong Kong's foreign exchange. And Hong Kong is now de facto part of China. There's no, one country, two systems, it's one country, one system. What is India's foreign exchange reserve? Maybe around $600 billion. So there's a lot of asymmetry. The bilateral trade between India and China is in favor of China to the tune of $100 billion. China is India's second largest trading partner. And we are subsidizing the PLA, the Chinese armed forces, by actually giving them $100 billion every year, which we should be stopping.
Right.
How can we do that? We'll have to make sure that we manufacture domestically whatever we are importing on cheap level from China. China does silly things. They are not silly things, they are small things to instigate neighbors of India in the Indian subcontinent region, whether that is Pakistan, whether that is Sri Lanka, whether that is Maldives, whether that is Nepal, whether that is Bangladesh, whether that is Myanmar. Why they do? Because they have the cash to do so. And then we try to bail out these countries. So we are, throwing more money like $5 billion on Sri Lanka, but we don't, get anything in return. Chinese research vessels still come into Sri Lanka's ports and indulge in espionage activities. We bailed out Maldives so many times. We give them money, aid unconditionally. Ultimately, who is the beneficiary? Beneficiary is the China. So we have to understand this whole game China is orchestrating in Indian subcontinent region. And people have talked about it. This is not the first time. I think there is need for hardening of our policy decisions towards China's meddling in India's sphere of influence. And that is going to be a major challenge. And for that matter, we may have to desist from talking about quote unquote one China policy or one China principle. China was never a neighbor of India. There's no Indo-Chinese border. India has a border with a country that was known as Trivishta, aka Tibet. India never had a border with China till China occupied the nation of Tibet militarily and illegally. And China is continuing to work on altering the borders with Bhutan and also with Nepal.
Yeah.
So we need to understand there's need for hardening Indian stance towards China. That will not be possible till we improve our comprehensive national strength.
Yeah.
So rather than getting by the rhetoric that yes, India, China are destined to be friends or civilizational partners, that's not going to work because Chinese actions speak more than their words. Their words are deceptive. And if I may tell you, there's no character in Mandarin for word transparency. Chinese policies are designed on the basis of Sun Tzu's philosophy, which is based on deception. So don't be lulled into complacency that we are resolving quote unquote border issue and things will be hunky-dory. China is facing the headwinds in their economy, and they are facing an 800-pound gorilla on the international arena, which is United States under Trump 2.0 regime. And they want to protect their flanks. So they are trying to actually sing love songs for India. This is a strategy so that they do not have multiple conflicts at the same time. So you need to understand that yes, you don't want a hot war with China on the border, but don't be gullible enough, don't be naive enough to be fooled by a Chinese government and their tactical moves to keep you complacent. And reversing the trade balance by manufacturing more goods, more consumer items in India, and educating Indian public, because Indian public has a role to play. It's not just government, it's the civil society as well as Indian consumer. Don't go for cheap goods, day-to-day goods. It's your national duty not to buy Chinese. You buy built in India products,
Yeah.
and that help India's strategic rise, and that will consolidate India's comprehensive national power and India's ability to take on this behemoth of a nation, which is an expansionist, imperialistic nation under communist control.
Thank you so much, sir. So that was all the question I had on this topic. So what an incredible discussion. Dr. Adityanjee, we sincerely thank you for sharing your deep insight on the India geopolitical landscape for 2025. Your expertise has provided us with a clearer picture of the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead for India on the global stage. To our wonderful audience, thank you for tuning in and being part of the important conversation. If you found this episode informative, do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more expert-driven discussion on crucial topics. Stay connected with us for upcoming episode where we continue to explore India's strategic future. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep questioning the world around you.
Mr. Sinha, before we end, I have a message for India's diplomatic and policy establishment.
Yes, please, sir.
It's a verse or shloka from Chanakya, and it goes like this: Na kaschit kasya chinamitram, na kaschit kasya chinamitram, na kaschit kasya chidripuhu, vyavahareణ jayante, mitrani ripuvastatha. So in geopolitics, nobody is your permanent friend, nobody is your permanent enemy. It's only by their actual concrete behavior it is to be determined whether they are your friend or their enemy. Unfortunately, Indian policy establishment forgot its own culture, its own heritage, and forgot this. We keep on attributing it to Lord Palmerston from UK that there are no permanent enemies or no permanent friends, they are permanent interests. But if you go back to your own history, you find this, and it should be the guiding principle of mantra for Bharat's diplomacy and Bharat's policy planning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Namaskar.